This is not an easy video to do. Maybe it is, because there are lots of reasons why we disagree with Dave Ramsey. I'm not a person that's confrontational, but maybe this is confrontational.
We're making the video because we get this question a lot of what don't we like about the Dave Ramsey program, even though we've both done it.
Yes. And so in this video, stick around, we have 10 reasons why us and Dave are just going in two separate directions. Hey, what's up guys? It's Justine with Debt Free Millennials, the channel to crush your debt, live payment free. This is my husband, Kyle.
Hey.
And you've been thinking about doing this video for a while.
Yeah, we get a lot of comments in the Facebook group about steps, baby steps, things that are good, bad, ugly. And so we thought we'd spell it out for folks.
Yes. Also, if you're not part of the DFM fam and the Facebook community, the link is always available in the description box below. There are 4,000 members inside of that group where we talk about money in a private and safe setting. So one of the things that pops up a lot is Dave Ramsey, and I'm okay if you're following Dave Ramsey's baby steps. Good on you.
Something's better than nothing.
I started off on the Dave Ramsey train and then realized there were some things that just didn't vibe with me.
Yeah.
So should we go over, are we doing this in reverse order from like
the things
10 to the number 1?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go with reason number 10.
Okay, this is just a little gripe. I don't like that they're called baby steps. When you get to paying off a mortgage that's 300,000, 400,000, 500,000, maybe more, there ain't nothing baby about that. Someone who is struggling with finances to the point they can't afford a car and they're trying to save up $1,000 for an emergency fund, that can seem like a mountain. So to call them baby steps, I just don't agree with that.
And maybe he called them baby steps because he wants them to wants people to feel like, oh, this isn't like this giant thing that I have to do. It's just one thing at a time. Okay, reason number 9.
I disagree with his thoughts on giving. So when you look at his budget spreadsheet in his workbook, the first thing right there on the back, right there at the top, says tithe. If you can't pay your own bills, if you can't put food on your own table, if you can't do what you need to do to make yourself and your family financially secure, don't give away a single dime of your money. You are not set up to that stage yet. If you are looking at buying a Ferrari, if you've got everything set, if you've got all the monies in the world that you think you need, then you can start to give. Then you can start to donate. You can tithe. You can do whatever form of that you want. Now you can give in other ways. You can give time. That's something that's actually a little bit more difficult to give sometimes. But just donations right off the top when you're struggling to pay your own bills, I don't agree with that one at all.
But you're saying that you don't disagree with tithing, like?
Oh yeah, no, I don't disagree with that. I just disagree in the order of what you do. You got to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. That's all I really
so you're looking at it from like the airplane, put your oxygen mask on first before you help somebody else.
Yep.
All right, reason number 8.
There's been a lot of controversy about things that go on within the Dave Ramsey building. I won't go into those details, but you can look them up on Wikipedia and see a decent list of things that may point towards it not being the best environment to be an employee at. And so it kind of makes you wonder how things are run inside, what's really being portrayed on the outside. Is it true? Is it genuine? So just a little bit of caution there.
Okay, yeah. And we don't know. I mean, there's certainly been news circulating on the internet about maybe a toxic work environment that is either happening organically because of the people that are working for him, or maybe he's because he's the ringleader and maybe he's promoting a toxic work environment. Who knows? Either way, to have that kind of press is not a good thing and sends up some red flags.
Yeah.
Reason number 7.
Reason number 7. He continues to talk about rice and beans, rice and beans, rice and beans until you get out of debt. Well, I really disagree with that. I think life is too short and there's too many unknowns. Sometimes to get out of debt can take 20 years. I mean, that's not an unreasonable number for some of the folks that I know and the situations that they're in. Not it's sometimes not by choice. That's just the way it is. But I've also known people who they live on rice and beans, and they get to the point where they're no longer on rice and beans, and then something happens and their ticket's up and they don't get to live life the way they wanted to. I think you need to have a healthy balance between saving and living life.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Some of the other reasons that we've talked about earlier that you really were kind of like, yes, I don't agree with that. And I'm like, oh yeah, I hadn't really thought about this one. I can say hands down, I do not agree with the rice and beans mentality, because when I was paying off $35,000 in student loan debt, I also went on vacations because that wasn't important to me. I still had to live my life. So I ended up, in the span of 2.5 years of paying off that debt, I went on trips to Florida, Colorado, Northern California, went whitewater rafting, Puerto Rico, went scuba diving. I did all of those things, and Dave Ramsey really does promote this scorched earth approach to paying down your debt.
You know, another example of when I think you should really avoid the rice and beans scorched earth is, this is just one example, your kids. You know, going to Disney World is kind of that family vacation thing that a lot of people talk about, and this is just one example. But your kids are only going to enjoy that when they're a certain age. If you did rice and beans for a long time and they're 19 years old, they're not going to enjoy or have the same face that they would when they see Mickey or Pluto for the first time, right? Mm-hmm. So sometimes you got to just take those opportunities to enjoy those moments in life.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with this one. All right, reason number 5.
He constantly claims a 12% return on the market, and it's actually closer to 10. And he's been, we're not the only ones to figure this one out. This one is all over the internet. But basically, the return that he's looking at is, it's not a real return. So if you have $1,000 invested and that investment goes up 25%, it goes up to $1,250. Now, the next year, if it goes down 25%, that doesn't mean you went back down to $1,000. You actually went less than that. It's like $900 and some dollars. So you have less than what you started with. And so when you start to look at the averages, 25% up and then 25% down, that's a 0% average of return, but you still end up with less money. So anyways, it's a math problem. We won't get into the details of it here.
Gotcha. Okay, reason number 4. He and his daughter, Rachel Cruz, claim you can get a 4-year bachelor's degree just by applying for scholarships and working your way through college. And I just don't know if that's true for everybody. That certainly wasn't the case for me.
No.
Also, I worked a ton my junior and senior year, and I felt like I really had to choose between giving up my weekends for work and doing the fun stuff, like going to games and attending sorority events that I wanted to be involved with. So that one's a tough one.
Okay, reason number 4.
Okay, mutual funds. He says mutual funds are the way to go, more so over than index funds or ETFs. And his endorsed local provider system is just whack, you guys. Like, I went through this, and I had to pay a 5.75% commission up front in order to invest my money into these mutual funds. And it just was a disaster. I'm so glad I pulled that money out early and that it wasn't with this financial advisor for a long time, and I got into index funds. But the fact that he keeps promoting this and doesn't really talk a lot about index funds means that he's not giving you the full story, and so that is just no bueno.
His endorsed local providers actually have to pay him a monthly fee to be on the list. So if he's getting paid by these people, he doesn't have your benefit in mind. Number 3.
The $1,000 emergency fund is not enough. I can attest to this, and so many other millennials can too. $1,000 in an emergency fund is simply not enough to cover an emergency. What if you had to go to the emergency room, a hospitalization, you lose your job? $1,000 isn't going to cover your basic living expenses. And so rather than having $1,000 as your starter emergency fund, and I get this, I know Dave says this is just a starter emergency fund. This isn't the whole thing. I gotcha. Everybody in the DFM fam has talked about this, and we all agree that 2 to 3 months of living expenses should be your home base, your starter emergency kit. Then once you're debt free, you can build up to a 6 months worth of emergency expenses or more. Some people are more comfortable with 9 to 12 months of living expenses saved up in emergency savings account. We personally have a 6-month emergency fund built up.
Yep.
And actually, you can check out that video up here of why we have that amount of money in that video. I'll explain everything.
Great.
Great. Number 2.
Okay. Number 2, paying off all of your debt before you start retirement don't ever do that. Just please don't.
Okay. There is a way that you can do this, right? Because when I was paying off my debt and doing the baby steps, I still was contributing to my retirement.
Absolutely. Everyone should.
I wasn't maxing out my retirement. And I wasn't doing any outside investing other than my 401k. And so I think that is absolutely fine that you can do that. Heck, if you want to contribute up to the match with your employer, do that. That's free money. Do that. And then let's continue to attack the debt. I think it would be foolish to not be able to start that, especially if you just graduated from college. If you're in your 20s and 30s, let's get the retirement investing pot rolling and then go back to really putting large amounts of money towards your debt. If you can pay that off fast, what I say to a lot of people is your debt-free journey can be as long as you want it to be, or it can be as short as you want it to be. And so the bigger the payments that you're making every single month means you have a shorter time that you are making these sacrifices. So I could have easily stretched out those 2.5 years to double that.
Easily.
I could have, I was on the 10-year standard repayment plan for my student loans. I could have said, I'll cut that in half and do it in 5 years. I said, nope, I'm going to do it in 2.5 years. And so it really is up to you and what your goals are. The goal, and what I say on this channel, the goal is for you to become payment free and crush the debt and do it as quickly as you can. That's the way that I look at it.
Yeah.
But you also don't want to sacrifice those early years that you could be putting money into your investments in your retirement.
There's one more part of this that I want to add, and that has to do it's a little bit of a math thing. I'm a math guy. So, for example, you've got your mortgage. It's a 30-year mortgage. Say you just refinanced or you just got your first mortgage, and you have an amazing credit score. So you got an interest rate, say 3%. Amazing, mind-blowingly low interest rate. Now, over those 30 years, if you decided to pay it off earlier, so you only paid it off in 15 instead of 30 or 10 instead of 30, you actually missed out on a lot of gains in the market. So instead of paying off your mortgage early, you could easily take the money that you would use to pay off your mortgage early and instead put that into an index fund that would return 10%. So now you're actually making more money and having more money at the end by not paying that off or that mortgage off early. So by putting it into the same amount in the market, you would get 10% and you're only losing 10% interest on the mortgage. Now, here's the big...
Wait, what? You earn 10%, but you'd only be losing how much?
So all that money that you'd be putting towards your mortgage to pay it off early, instead of putting it towards the mortgage, you put it into an index fund that over 30 years is probably going to average out to be a 10% return. You would make a lot more money than if you had paid off your mortgage early. Now, there's a caveat to that.
Yeah.
And I think we're in violent agreement on this one because nobody does that. Nobody does that. Everyone's like, oh, I have this extra cash. I'm going to go play with it, get another car, bigger mortgage, thing like that. So that's the thing is like, even though the math makes sense, very rarely do you see follow through on that. So there's kind of an asterisk next to that one.
Yeah. There's very few people that would fit into that category.
Yeah, we probably wouldn't. We'd have more vacations, things like that.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah.
Or find reasons to put it towards this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
Okay.
The biggest reason that we disagree with Dave Ramsey, the number one thing on our list of 10 is...
He believes you should live without a credit card. I know. I got sucked into that belief as well that I needed to live my life without a credit card, but hear me out. We use credit cards to help boost our credit score. We want to boost our credit score because we want a good mortgage. We want a good mortgage because we have never been homeowners before, and we want to buy a home.
In a high cost of living city.
In a high cost of living area, which makes it super difficult. If you were to not have a credit history, it would be super difficult to get approved by a lender.
Or to get a good interest rate.
And that is, at least personally, my number one reason why we have a credit card. Second reason would be the perks. And I think Dave Ramsey and his people are like, most people don't use their perks. They don't use their rewards. Let me tell you, I took $900 worth of our points that we racked up on our credit card and used it to pay for the bulk of our trip to Europe. That included flights and hotels, which is the biggest cost when you're talking about travel. Now, that works for us. Maybe you're not into traveling and that's not your jam. So maybe you don't find that perk.
But now they got cash back on things and all that stuff. And
it's something, we just took advantage of it 2 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, we went up to LA to go watch the Chiefs and Chargers game, and we had to book a hotel, and I thought, ding dong, let's use some credit card points for our hotel. And we don't have to pay for the hotel room.
Yep.
It's very easy to do, and I think this is one of the things where as we are progressing into a more cashless economy, it just makes sense.
The convenience factor of having a credit card is also huge. And I want to go back to the interest rate. Like, if you have an 800 above credit score because you manage your credit cards really well, you pay them off every month in full. That's the big, bold thing. Pay it off every month in full.
Yes.
They can save you tens of thousands of dollars and maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars over a lifetime. For example, the housing prices that we are looking at in San Diego are close to $1 million. And that's not a mansion. That's a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom style house. So on $1 million mortgage, if we have a 3% interest versus a 6% interest over that same time period, that's a humongous chunk of money. And so that's one of the biggest reasons that I say have at least one credit card. Put your gas on there, put your groceries on there, things that you know that you're going to spend money on, that you have to spend money on. And that at least gets you some kind of credit that's building and going to save you lots of money in the long run. I still can't believe that he's still riding the gravy train of no credit cards at all. Now, there might be a very small percentage of people who can't handle a credit card. So there's probably some validity to it for a very small portion of the population.
Yeah.
But in general, 90, 95, 99% of people just set a reminder on your phone to pay it off every month. The first day of the month at 10 o'clock, my phone alarm goes off and it says, pay your damn bills.
I didn't know it said that.
Yeah.
And then you remind me.
And then I text her and I'm like, hey, don't forget we got to pay our bills today.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh yeah, thank you. Yes. So if you haven't opened a credit card before, or if you've just graduated college and you're like, okay, yeah, get me on that credit card train, but I'm a little scared. Honestly, one of the easiest ways to start is with your bank. And now you're thinking, oh, my bank's credit card, that doesn't give me hardly anything. Hear me out, because the credit cards that you want to go after, the big ones, chances are, because you have established pretty much little to no credit history, you're probably not going to get approved for some of those bigger ones. So if you can start with your bank's credit card first and establish some credit history over the next 2 years, then you can go ahead and apply for the credit card that you really want that fits your lifestyle. And so this is something that you can easily just open up with your bank and just put a Netflix subscription on it. Just put your trips to fill up the car, and that's it. That's going to be enough of a baseline. Plus, if you had any just reoccurring payments that you are making, that's going to be part of your credit history. And then that's going to look favorable to some of these bigger banks like Chase. And maybe you want to open a Chase Freedom card, which, by the way, has no annual fees and has a really good cashback program. I'm not an affiliate. This is not sponsored. I just think it's a really good card to start off with.
Yeah, there's lots of them.
And then you can kind of pivot from there. That's the way that I would do it. That's the way I wished I would have done it. But honestly, you could just get married to somebody who already has really good credit history and hop on as an authorized user.
Yeah, so I finally convinced this one that like credit cards are not the devil, because we paid for our entire honeymoon on the credit card points that I had built up in college and graduate school.
And we went to Cancun and
the whole thing was paid for.
Yeah,
Flights, resort,
all inclusive.
Everything.
It was amazing. Yeah, so you could do it that way, but keep in mind, you just got to bank on marrying somebody who has an 800 credit score. Yes, thanks, darling.
No problem.
All right, so that's our top 10 list of why we're not vibing with Dave. Let us know in the comments below. Do you disagree with Dave Ramsey?
Yeah.
Let us know what's your biggest gripe with him.
One thought that I've read plenty online is that Dave Ramsey is good for people who are bad with money and bad for people who are good with money.
100%.
So eventually, as you get more financially savvy, that will seem to make more sense. But if you're just starting out, if you're doing something to help yourself with your finances, educating yourself somehow, awesome.
Financial literacy is important, and learning it from different sources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, guys, for watching. Give this one a big thumbs up. We'll catch you in the next one.